Good morning, and welcome to a new episode of Meatpacking Unpacked, Community Connected, brought to you by the Meatpacking District. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois, and I'm the Executive Director of the Meatpacking Business Improvement District. Today, I'm joined by gallery owner Ivy Brown and photographer Brian Rose, both with distinct connections to the Meatpacking District. Ivy Brown has lived her life as a pioneer in the very city where she was born. In 1985, she bought a fourth-floor flat in the Triangle building and transformed it into a haven of tranquility and artistic expression. After 22 frenetic years working in marketing and commercial work, Ivy opened her gallery, Ivy Brown Gallery, with the goal of creating a space for herself and her community to be able to express themselves without a marketing executive over their shoulders. Founded in a spirit of creative relationship building and thoughtful expression. You can find her around here too, often enjoying a cup of coffee on a plaza around the district with her dog. And Brian Rose attended Cooper Union and studied with photographers Joel Merowitz and Larry Fink. In 1980, he and fellow Cooper graduate Edward Fosty photographed the Lower East Side. And in the mid-2000s, Rose began re-photographing the Lower East Side. Time and Space on the Lower East Side was published in 2010. Two companion books followed, Metamorphosis, about the Meatpacking District, and WTC, a chronicle of the Twin Towers and the rebuilding of the World Trade Center. After the election of Donald Trump in 2016, Rose photographed Trump's legacy, a failure in Atlantic City, and his book, Atlantic City, was published. Rose's images have been collected by the MoMA and the Met, and also grace the walls of the Meatpacking Bids office. So with that, right. Thank you both very much for being here today.
Thank you, good morning.
Thanks. Ivy, let's start with you. You've been in the neighborhood since, when did you exactly move in? Was it 84, 85?
85.
All right.
55 years ago.
Yeah. So what brought you here? Did you just find a spot and it was where you landed, or was there a reason?
I had been living in a studio apartment, and my parents had to relocate to the UK, and I moved into their loft in Union Square in 1983, and they came back in 85, and there was no way that I was going to move back into a studio apartment
after having been in a loft.
Yeah, so I started looking for a space, me and a couple of friends, and back in the day, you looked in the Village Voice. That's what everybody did. You waited at Gem Spa on 8th Street at 12 o'clock on Wednesday, and picked up the Village Voice and started to look for a space. And initially, when I saw this space in the paper, I was like, there is no way I am going to live in the Meatpacking District. It's disgusting, it looks dangerous, it's gritty, it's gross. And after 3 weeks of looking for a space in New York, it started to look pretty good. I was a little concerned it was still there, but I decided, that I was gonna at least go and take a look at it. And I've never had the experience I had when I came to see this space, where I walked in the front door, and mind you, on the front door, it said, it was Dante's, Inferno quote, abandon hope, all ye who enter. And as I walked up the stairs, I had this incredible sensation that I was home. And I hadn't even gotten into the space yet. And by the time I walked in the door, I was sold. I was like, this is where I need to live. So that was, my journey of at least finding this space.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And Brian, how about you? Are you a native New Yorker? What's your connection to the city?
I'm from Virginia originally, and I came to New York to go to Cooper Union. So I came in 1977 and got an apartment on the Lower East Side, East Village, East 4th Street, $50 a month.
Oh!
Walk up, 3-room bathroom in the, bathtub in the kitchen and a toilet in the hall. So But I was, I was really happy. I had my own place. I didn't have to have a roommate. I set up a dark room in there. I was painting in there. It was crazy. And I was making music as well as taking photographs. I mean, I probably, back then I would have complained, but looking back on it, I feel like that was a really wonderful time.
Yeah, absolutely. Ivy, you have a gallery now, but you have a career in the arts. So how did you sort of find your way into that? And sort of second to that is what's your medium in terms of you defining yourself as an artist? Do you, I guess, is also the question there.
Well, I studied sculpture, but I don't define myself as an artist, and I don't show my work. I just do that for myself. But as you mentioned in the introduction, I used to be in the commercial arts. I used to represent photographers and fashion stylists, set stylists, and hair and makeup artists. And I did that for 25 years. And it was a great time in that industry. I worked a lot in the music industry and advertising industry and fashion industry. In the fashion industry, everybody loves you. I was always a little spooked that, everybody loved me. I was like, I have no place to go from here but down. And the music industry was wonderful and really creative. This was pre-digital. So as digital came into play, the industry changed and the music industry started to change drastically. I opened the gallery as a playground for those artists to have a place to just be creative. Mm-hmm. So it was really meant to be not what I did, but an extension of this other business, and a playground for us. And one thing kind of evolved into the other, and as life does often kind of have its own way, in 2007 I finally closed that business.
And then here you are now.
Here I am.
So Brian, for you, one more question about the past, and then I'm going to use your book to talk about sort of recent past and then where we are now and some future talk as well. So your connection, Metamorphosis, tell us the story. You found those negatives, right? And sort of then went to rephotograph the Meatpacking. Is that how it came to be?
Yeah, back in 1985, I went to the neighborhood, to the Meatpacking District with my camera, not really sure what I was up to. It was January of '85. It was bitterly cold. There was snow around. I had photographed these other neighborhoods in Lower Manhattan, the Lower East Side, the financial district, and Central Park as well. So I was thinking of it as a project. So I started out and I spent a few days in the Meatpacking District and also up a little bit in the West Side on Chelsea. And then I didn't feel inspired. I was kind of suffering through it actually because it was so cold. I use a big camera on a tripod. Your hands get cold, it's tough. So I put that work away. I got the film developed, but I didn't contact print it and I didn't make any prints and I never looked at the work. So it was many years later, after doing the Lower East Side book, Time and Space, that I thought about it. This box, I never completely forgot about it, but it was there on the shelf. So I opened it up, scanned the negatives and started looking at it. And I was really stunned. I had no idea that this was going to be opening up this world that had ceased to exist, this empty but incredible, wonderfully decrepit New York from 1985.
It was very film noir.
Yes.
Back in the day, it was, very surreal.
Yeah. Except I was shooting it in color. So the noir aspect isn't really there, but the rich browns and reds and colors that you associate with that time are definitely there in the pictures.
A lot of red.
Yeah. well, literally read on on the street sometimes
Yeah,
from the meatpacking businesses.
To this day, when I walk outside, I stop breathing through my nose. It's so ingrained in me that, there is this barrier of, bad thing out there.
Yeah.
I realize it as I'm walking that I'm no longer breathing through my nose.
Well, Ivy, what I remember, aside from the odor, was you were talking about walking. I always felt like the cobblestones were greasy underfoot. That
Very
they slippery, yeah, from the fat and the antiseptics that they used and whatever. There was that.
So impressed of how the transvestites in their big stilettos could walk on these slippery cobblestones and stay upright.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you then came back in 2013 and shot the district. And did you purposely set your, did you sort of, I took this picture last, so let me take it again now, or did you just sort of re-experience the district organically and shoot that way?
Well, I just, when I did the Lower East Side project, I didn't redo the exact shots in general. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to rediscover the neighborhood fresh. In this case, though, it really called out for doing a lot of exact before afters. So I actually went out on the street with prints and I would look at, I'd find the exact spot. It's an interesting process to do that. You realize, though, that when you go there the second time, a lot of times, whatever it was that made the picture special the first time around, it's not necessarily there the second time around. So that's one of the challenges, is making a really good picture the second go round. And sometimes what I did was I actually just deviated a little bit, moved this way or that way, waited for particular light, time of day, things like that.
It's pretty, it's when you have the book and the spread and you see those photographs, jarring is not the correct word, but it's striking. But that's the city. It's the nature of change too. But the way you see it side by side on your prints is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So here we are today, living through a pandemic. Ivy, what have you been, and first of all, across the board, we're seeing some incredible creativity. We're seeing amazing art taking place across the city. We've been talking to artists for the past couple of weeks on this program. But Ivy, how have you been getting through? What have you been doing, or what have you discovered, since mid-March?
Well, we're doing online exhibits. I'm totally redoing the website and doing all of the virtual. So we're getting ready to open the fall show, and we'll do a physical show, and we will have people here by appointment. And then we will also do the whole thing virtually. So we'll have a virtual opening and we'll have a virtual artist talk. And, what it's done is kind of increase your reach and your tools. So, I am doing both, the virtual and the physical. It's a lot of time on the computer. Mm-hmm. That's the only, and I miss people. I miss being social and having large gatherings and having events. And as wonderful as it is to be able to do all this virtually, it's not the same. It is not the same as having a room full of people that I could hug and say hello to and have everybody here at the same time having a mutual experience. So I really miss it.
Yeah. I walk around, sometimes I find myself holding my arms on each side because my reaction always is hug somebody or shake a hand or, give somebody a kiss kind of thing. And it's hard to resist that, that feeling.
Yeah, no, there was an artist here today he was taking down the show that's been here since March 4th. And he came in with flowers and he gave me a gift, and I had to hug him. I'm like, I'm sorry. He's like, is it okay? I'm like, I have to, you know, you've got a mask on, I've got a mask on. We're all being careful, but I've got to hug you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, then I'll go take a shower.
And Brian, how about you? Both living, artist, working, all that kind of stuff. What have the past 5 months plus been like for you?
Well, I've been pretty busy, actually. About mid-March, really when the lockdown started, I decided to start walking around Williamsburg by myself. You know, that was the one thing we were allowed to do, was to take walks. So I went out and started out just trying to figure out what it was I was doing. And then after a while, I realized that I was going to photograph Williamsburg and do it comprehensively. And I ended up doing 16 walks, miles and miles and miles, and photographed it, and then decided that I was going to self-publish a book. And I did a Kickstarter campaign, and now I have this book that I've done that I raised $9,000 on Kickstarter. It was unbelievable. And then there were the protests when the George Floyd killing or murder took place, and I sort of participated a little bit. I was a little bit afraid of the crowds, but I was there. I took some pictures, and then I went down to Richmond, Virginia, and photographed the last days of the Confederate statues before they came down.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm from Virginia. I'm from down there. I had followed that story for quite a while. And so now I'm doing a limited edition book on that as well. So I'm turning this pandemic into a really creative, productive period for me.
That's wonderful.
It's fantastic. I mean, I think that it's amazing. I've always said that art plays a role in every aspect of New York City, and no question, we're seeing art just thrive right now. It's an expression, and we're living through something nobody has before, and so that's it's a really wonderful thing. And I am eager. Someday the Whitney will reopen, and someday we'll be able to visit places freely. You know, I was talking to friends, and I'm sure we're all New Yorkers, and they said, oh, you know, well, the restaurants are open, and can't you go shopping? And I said, there's so much more to this town than just restaurants and just shopping. To not be able to just go to the Met or go to the Whitney or the gallery, anything really, is a really difficult thing for us to be going through, I feel like.
And it is heartbreaking for me to see the amount of people moving, the amount of moving trucks and furniture on the sidewalk. You know, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So.
I have no doubt the city will do, in the long run, will do fine.
Oh, of course.
You know, I lived through the 70s and the 80s and all of that. And, you know, people thought the city was going to go down the drain. But, you know, the reality is there's just a tremendous amount of creativity in this city. And you know, a few people will leave for sure. But, you know, are you going to go to the suburbs? Ivy, you ready to go to the suburbs?
I'm not going anywhere. You know, and I love seeing what people are doing to the places that are boarded up. Actually, the Whitney I go by because it's like an ever-changing exhibit out there to see what people are doing on the boarded up Whitney.
Yeah.
It's kind of great. Initially, you know, nobody did anything on all these boarded up stores. And I was like, you know, this is a huge opportunity. You know, why are they not taking advantage of this? And then that kicked in. And that is really wonderful to see throughout the city, how that's been used as a canvas. I love it.
Absolutely. All right, Ivy, so what should people know about your gallery and the Ivy Brown Gallery space and what it is.
Well, it's not a white box. It's an unusual space. And, because we have these moving walls, every time you come to a show, it's going to be different. I tend to like things that are a little off the beaten path. I like unusual art and try and create an experience every time.
I can attest to that being the case when one visits a show or an opening at the Ivy Brown Gallery. So thank you for that. And all right, you've been in meatpacking for a long time. What's your favorite, and you live in such an iconic building, but to this day, what's your favorite building in the district?
Well, of course, my building is my favorite building. But I also like 9, is it 9th Avenue? Or
the corner building, right at Gansevoort and 9th there on the northwest corner. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful building.
1 or 3 9th Avenue. I forget which one. Yeah.
I think it also has an address on Gansevoort. So, and I love just those little buildings where Serafina is, and just that little patch there is just, I think it's otherworldly. I think it's
looking at that corner. I found a picture taken in 1990 and there was a sign that said Little West 12th and 9th Avenue, and it was like in the middle of what we refer to as Gansevoort Plaza today, looking at the buildings you're talking about now, Ivy. And just all that open space completely empty, one car caught in the frame driving north, like a jalopy just driving up 9th Avenue. And at a beautiful, like the light was beautiful, and of course going and trying to recapture that picture, you couldn't get the perspective because we have umbrellas in the plaza, and there's so much has changed, and to see all that space unutilized then now, as a space for people, it brought a big smile to my face to sort of see that.
That's wonderful. Where did you see that?
I'll send you the picture. There's this group on Facebook called Manhattan Before 1990.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a photographer on the Upper West Side, and I forget his name, but it was really, somebody sent it to me, and then of course I then, had joined the group and realized it, but it was pretty striking.
Fantastic.
So, and Brian, you've photographed a lot. You photographed neighborhoods, but buildings in particular. Do you seek out architects to photograph in terms of their buildings, or is it just sort of a subject that strikes you?
Well, I have done architectural photography for architects in the past. These days, I'm mostly doing my own projects. But because of my background, and I have an urban planning background too, before I got into art school. So I'm very aware of buildings, and I love modern buildings as well as the older buildings. I like the way in which modern and historic buildings in the Meatpacking District are kind of living together. It's not always perfect, but fortunately the core of the neighborhood got saved, as a historic district. But what I wanted to say is my favorite buildings are not really buildings at all. My favorite things are the 2 pedestrian bridges, like on 15th and 10th Avenue.
That was the other place I would have lived.
Yeah, that's such a striking view, especially now that you get to see it from the High Line. Looking down.
Well, the one is kind of Venetian looking, and the other is sort of Art Deco looking. So they're very different from each other, but they're both wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's interesting. There was significant opposition at the time when the neighborhood was landmarked. But what I love about the Meatpacking District's landmark, like the way the historic district has been interpreted, the opening line of the LPC report is that it's never been a tear down neighborhood, in that the buildings were simply repurposed and not, have never been reused for what they were originally built for. And the challenge that it gave modern day architects to build on top of and incorporate that. I think it's a fabulous example. And also, obviously, I'm bragging about a neighborhood that I love. But the really extreme juxtapositions of what you see of really well-preserved 19th century, early 20th century buildings with 2000s, mid-2000s additions is really something.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's done really well. Most of it's done really well.
Yeah, there's always going to be, good ones and bad ones. But I think that the diversity of architecture is one of the things that makes the neighborhood so interesting.
Yeah.
That's the fun of it. That's what we like. And that's what we want to make sure comes back. And I was walking around today and it feels busier this week than it did last week, actually. Did you notice that too, Ivy?
Absolutely. And it's louder. It's like there's more noise. There's
things going on. And people are, everybody's just, continuing to figure it out, which is good. So I want to just jump into our quick round of fire questions to unpack a little bit more about you guys. I promise, don't be afraid. They're just some fun questions, fire round that you can each answer. So we talked a lot about art, but in terms of your favorite, your personal favorite medium, obviously, Brian, you're a photographer, but that might not be what you like to see in Ivy, sculpture for you, but what's your favorite genre or art itself?
Me?
Sure, we'll start with you.
I can't say that I have a favorite because I'm so all over the place with what I like, but I like things that are contemporary that also have a historical element to them with a twist.
Got it.
So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Brian, how about you? Is there a medium or a theme that you enjoy?
Well, I do, architecture, definitely. And when I travel, I often make pilgrimages to see specific buildings. So I love doing that. And I've done that in cities all over the country and in Europe.
Got it. All right, and now more directly on the remainder. So a night at the theater or a visit to the museum? Ivy?
Museum.
Brian?
I'm a museum person, actually. The last thing I saw in the theater was David Byrne on Broadway.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. Egg and cheese on a roll or a bagel with cream cheese?
Ooh, bagel.
A bagel and cream cheese.
Okay. A beach visit or a park picnic?
Beach.
Yeah, I'd probably go with the beach also.
All right. Cocktails at the bar or tearing it up on the dance floor?
Oh, tearing it up on the dance floor.
I'm terrible at dancing, so I park myself at the bar. But still have a good time.
Absolutely. We can accommodate all those things too, so that's the nice thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for this conversation. Ivy, I thought hard of whether or not I was going to have you share the story. Maybe I will now because I'm introducing it. About the time when when the gay sex club was in the basement of your building and the power went out, right? And you had to go down, you used to have to go visit them on the regular.
Yeah, Lenny down in the manhole.
Thank you. Never forget that story, and thank you for sharing that little clip of it.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate you guys both joining us today. And thank you all for tuning in to Meatpacking Unpacked. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to stay tuned for more of the Meatpacking District and the city's cast of characters across the cultural, political, and business spectrums. See you all next week.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.